Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello students, I am Professor Kavita Solanki at University School of Law and Legal Studies, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, Delhi, Dwarka. Today we are going to start with the Labour Law 2, and into which I will start with the lecture number 1, which is on Code on Social Security 2020. It deals with the social security. It encompasses protective measures and which has to be given it to the employees, organized sectors or unorganized sectors, but here under this code, it has been given it to the gig workers and the platform workers. Before passing of this code, it was the recommendation of the Labour Commission, that is, instead of having multiple codes, why we are not coming up with the effective labour law? Why we are not amalgamating the legislations which are relating with the wages, which are relating with the occupational health and safety, or the legislation where we are dealing with the social security measures, or the wages legislations. So like to take this kind of the thing into the notification, this kind of the recommendation has been proposed and accepted. Now we are ready with the 4 codes. Purpose of this code is just to give the broader coverage to the organized sectors, to the gig workers and to the platform workers, and we can provide the social security to these workers either into the form of the gratuity or provident fund or the miscellaneous provisions of the schemes and the benefits which are governed by the central government and the state governments. This code on social security 2020, the aim of this code is just to make the amendment and consolidate the laws relating with the social security in order to extend the social security benefits to all the employees and workers regardless of whether they are into the organized sector or they are into the unorganized sectors. So the Code on Social Security 2020, it has been introduced into the Lok Sabha on 19th of September 2020, and it was passed by the Lok Sabha on 22nd September 2020, and it was passed by the Rajya Sabha on 23rd September 2020. Assent was given by the President of India on 28th of September 2020. This code consists of basically 14 chapters, 164 sections and 7 schedules. Into this code, we would be taking the important definitions for the better standing of this code. So I'm taking the first definition which has been given under this code is, that is the definition of the social security, whom we would be saying the social security and where this social security benefit would be applicable. Definition of the social security has been given in section 2 clause 78 of the social security code. It defines that it means the measure of the protection afforded to the employees, unorganized workers, gig workers and the platform workers to ensure access to health care and to provide income security, particularly in case of the old age, unemployment, sickness, invalidity, work injury, maternity or loss of a bread earner by means of the rights conferred on them and the schemes framed under this code. Universal Declaration of the Human Rights, UDHR, into which section 22 says social security is a human rights, because this is a duty of the international and the nations just to provide the social security to their citizens. The objective of this code is to provide social security with goal to extend it to all the employees in either they are into the organized sectors, unorganized sectors, any other sectors, gig workers and the platform workers, and to ensure their access to health care and provide income security, especially into the situations such as the old age, unemployment, sickness, invalidity, work-related injuries, maternity or the loss of the bread earner. These rights and these schemes are conferred under the Code on Social Security 2020. So for this purpose, 9 legislation has been amalgamated now because they were talking about the security. So all the 9 legislations has been clubbed now for the smooth functioning of the code, into which we are having the Employee Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1952, Employee State Insurance Act 1948, Maternity Benefit Act 1961, Building and the Other Construction Workers Welfare Cess Act 1996, Payment of Gratuity Act 1972, Employees Exchange, Compulsory Notification of Vacancies Act 1959, the Signed Workers Welfare Fund Act 1981, the Unorganized Workers Social Security Act 2008, and the Employee Compensation Act 1923. Into this code, we are having the schemes, that is, the central government to frame the schemes for the employees. On the other hand, the state government, they have to frame the schemes for the employees, and it is a mandate for the central government and the state government to frame the schemes for their employees. The central government has to frame the schemes on the areas basically, that is relating with the life and the disability cover, health and the maternity benefit, old age protection, education, and any other benefit. State government, so it is a mandate for the state government to frame the schemes for the employees relating with the provident fund, employment injury benefit, housing, education scheme for the children, skill upgradation of the workers, funeral assistance, and old age homes. So, silent features of this code. Now, the coverage has been broadened. So, just to give the benefit to all the categories of the workers, now the welfare schemes, they would be applicable upon the unorganized sector now. Organized sector, gig workers and the platform workers has been included. So, I am taking the definition of the gig workers here. Gig workers, it has been defined under section 2 clause 35. It says that gig worker means a person who perform work or participates in a work arrangement and earn from such activities outside of the traditional employer-employee relationship. So, the person is, whom we would be saying the gig worker, the person is performing or participate into such a kind of the work arrangement where he is able to get his earning. But this is other than the traditional employer and the employee relationship. Nowadays, if we see that food delivery boys or either e-commerce, they would be coming under the category of the gig workers. Either it is a case of the Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, Nykaa, and multiple e-commerce websites we are having. Those who are working into these activities and earning the benefit from such a kind of the activities, they would be coming under the category of the gig workers. And platform work has been defined in under the code, section 2 clause 60, platform workers. It means platform work means a work arrangement outside of a traditional employer-employee relationship in which organizations or individuals use an online platform to assess the other organizations or individuals to solve specific problems or to provide the specific services or such other activities which may be notified by the central government in exchange of the payments. Say for example, platform work is again, it is other than the traditional employer-employee relationship, and here normally the services are provided and the service sector has been provided by the central government. Say for example, they provide the service basically. We says for the salon purposes, we says yes madam, and many more things. They are provided the services, and for this the central government, they can include the other sector into the category of the platform work. Unorganized work. Under section 2 clause 86, unorganized sectors has been defined, and it says that it means enterprise owned by the individuals or self-employed persons or engaged in the production or sale of the goods or providing services of any kind whatsoever, and where the enterprise employs workers or the number of such a worker is less than 10. So, unorganized work means that is where the benefit would be given to those persons who are, they are less than 10 in number. They would be coming, such a kind of the enterprises would be coming under the definition of the unorganized sectors. So now, and the second salient feature of the code is a wage definition. So now the wage definition has been revised and simplified. The components of the wages, otherwise we have realized we are having the multiple legislations where we are talking about the definition of the wages, but we are not having the uniform definition. So with this intention, these codes has been passed. Now we are having the simple definition of the wages and we are having the uniform definition of the wages, which would be applicable throughout all these codes. Definition of wages, it basically includes basic allowances, their allowances and retention allowances if they are having anything. So we into the definition of the wages, we include these three components. The exclusion part, we are having the category of the exclusion part, into which we are saying the bonus, house rent allowances, provident fund, commission to employees or overtime allowances or conveyance allowances, they would be excluded from the definition of the wages. But this amount, the exclusion part, cannot be more than the 50% of the wages. This kind of the exclusion amount should not to be the 50%. And on the other hand, like basic wages and the allowances, returning allowances, inclusion part has to be minimum 50%. Now, the another feature of this code is definition of the interstate migrant workers. So, interstate migrant workers, so means a person who is employed in an establishment and who has been recruited directly by the employer or indirectly through the contractor. Earlier we used to say the interstate migrant would be coming with the help of the contractor only, but we have realized this situation at the time of the COVID we have seen. So now this expansion has been broader now, and so just to give the benefit of the interstate migrant workers, we are considering either they are coming directly to the employer or with the help of the contractor from one state to the other state, and they are doing the work into the other state, so they would be coming under the category. And either the person has come on his own from one state and obtained the employment into the other state, or has subsequently changed the establishment within the destination state. So sometime what happened, the person is residing into the one state, but they get the employment into the other state, and later on they change the establishment, they shift to the other state. So all these persons, they would be coming under the category of the interstate migrant workers. So under this code, interstate migrant workers are also included for the benefit of the code of the social security. And now the self-employed persons are also covered under the definition of the interstate migrant workers. But we are having the wage ceiling. Those who want to get the benefit of the interstate migrant workers, the wage ceiling has been fixed for them, and that is they can get the benefit, but the salary of the interstate migrant workers has to be lesser than 18,000. Now, EPF, Employee Provident Fund, applicable to the establishment with 20 or more employees. So, under the Employee Provident Fund, it would be giving the benefit where the number of the person, the threshold has been fixed. Now, the employees has to be 20 or more than 20, where this Employee Provident Fund benefit would be given. And here, now the limit or the contribution from the employer side has been reduced. So, earlier, the employer used to give the more contribution for the provident fund, but now this contribution amount has been reduced, and they can contribute up to the 10%. On the other hand, contribution which has to be paid by the employee is again that has been reduced, and they would be paying the 10% from the employee side. Next feature of this code is ESI, Employee State Insurance, applicable to the establishment with 10 or more employees. So ESI would be applicable, and after that now gratuity benefit available on a proportionate, means pro rata basis. It means that is earlier under the Gratuity Act 1872. So we are having the provision where the person would be entitled to get the gratuity after completion of the services, but it is mandate, and they must have to serve 5 years of the minimum services. So after that they would be entitled to get the gratuity after the retirement, superannuation, and we are having the grounds to get the gratuity. But now under the code, this proportion we are saying is that someone has done the work lesser than that duration, so they would be entitled to get the gratuity, but on a proportion basis. So this is again a good step has been taken up. After that, the maternity benefit, so they are given under chapter 6 and given in section 59 to 72, and where it has been mentioned that it is to every establishment, being a factory, being a mine or plantation, including any such a establishment which belongs to government, and to every shop and the establishments. So now this duty has been assigned to the shop and the establishments in which 10 or more employees are employed or were employed on any day of the preceding 12 months in such other shops or the establishment notified by the appropriate government. So now the maternity benefit, the coverage has been broadened, so they would be entitled, here under this code, those who are doing the work into the factory, into the mines, or into the plantation, they would be getting this maternity benefit. And the scope of the maternity benefit has been expanded now. Those who are doing the work into the shop and the establishments, they would be, and the number is less than 10, they would be entitled to get this kind of the benefit. Section 59, it talks about employment of or work by women prohibited during certain period. So no employer shall knowingly employ women in an establishment during the 6 weeks immediately following the day of her delivery. So, and in case of the miscarriage or the medical termination of the pregnancy. So this restriction has been imposed on the employer. Now, if employer knows that the woman is pregnant, or the miscarriage has happened with the woman, or either it is a case of the medical termination of the Pregnancy Act, so the person cannot hire the woman into any of the establishments, especially during the 6 weeks immediately following the day of her delivery. It means, say for example, if the child has born on 1st of August, so that would be up to the 15th of September. So we can say that is how much time would be the 6 weeks. So it will start from 4 weeks of the August and the 2 weeks of the September. So after that they can do the work. Otherwise, after 6 weeks they are allowed to do the work, and not before that. And after that, no pregnant woman shall, on a request being made by her, be required by her employers to do during such a period specified. So if the woman has requested the employer, like she should not to be appointed with any kind of the work which is arduous in nature, which is dangerous in nature, and which involves a long standing hours, or in which by which is likely to interfere with her pregnancy or the normal development of the fetus, or is likely to cause miscarriage or adversely affect her health. So this is the duty of the employer. They must have to take care of these kind of the sensitive things. And this period referred to in because this is a duty of the employer. He must have to take care of this kind of the arduous nature of the job and the other care. Section 60 talks about right to payment of the maternity benefit. So every woman shall be entitled to, and her employer shall be liable for, the payment of the maternity benefit at the rate of her average daily wage for the period of her actual absence. She would be entitled to get the maternity benefit. So they would be deciding on the average daily wage. On that basis they would be giving. When we are using the term average daily wage, means what? How we will decide the average daily wage? It means the average of the woman's wages payable to her for the days on which she has worked during the period of 3 calendar months immediately preceding the date from which she absents herself on account of the maternity. So just to decide average daily wage, we would be, the 3 months of the wages would be taken into the consideration to decide the average monthly wages, average daily wages. On that basis they would be giving this kind of the maternity benefit. No woman shall be entitled to maternity benefit unless she has actually worked in an establishment for a period not less than the 80 days. So now, and in a 12 months immediately preceding the date of her expected delivery. So it is a mandate that she has done the work into any of the establishment not less than the 80 days. Now, continuation of the payment of the maternity benefit. It has been mentioned in section 61. So every woman entitled to the payment of the maternity benefit under this chapter. And section 62 talks about notice of claim for the maternity benefit and the payment therefore. So this is the duty of the woman, is they have to inform the employer for the maternity benefit or any other amount to which she may be entitled. For this the woman has to serve the notice. They have to inform the employer, and in case of the woman who is pregnant, and such a notice shall state that the date from which she will be absent from work not being a date earlier than the 6 months from the date of her expected delivery. So they must have, because they would be taking care of, and 6 months time has to be given it to the woman from the expected date of her delivery. The amount of the maternity benefit for a period exceeding the date of her expected delivery shall be paid in advance. So for this, what the employer can do is, the only favor employer can do is they can pay the advance money to the woman just to, so for the smooth delivery of the woman. So, and but for this, the employer has to produce a proof that the woman is pregnant, and the amount due for the subsequent period shall be paid by the employer to the woman within a 48 hours of the production of such a proof. Of course, it is a duty of the woman also. They must have to give this kind of the proof to the employer, so he can be satisfied and he can take care of this thing. So after the delivery, this is the duty of the person is within a 48 hours they have to give this kind of the amount. The failure to give the notice under this section shall not disentitle a woman to maternity benefit or any other kind of the amount under this chapter. So the woman should not put at the disadvantageous position if she is not able to produce this kind of the notice and information to the employer. Section 63, payment of the maternity benefit in case of the death of a woman. So the person nominated by the woman in the notice, so in case of the at the time of the delivery, if the woman dies, then in that case this kind of the maternity benefit, this amount has to be given to the nominee which has been assigned by the woman. So the person would be entitled to take this benefit, nominated person. And section 64, payment of the medical bonus of 3,500 rupees if no prenatal confinement, and in case of the postnatal care provided by the employer, that would be free of charge. And in case of section 65, leaves for the miscarriage, entitled to leave with the wages for a period of 6 weeks. So say for example, if the miscarriage has happened with the woman, then in that case this is the duty of the employer. They would be giving 6 weeks of the leave with the wages to the woman. And nursing breaks, when we talk about section 66, if we're talking about the nursing breaks, in addition to the intervals for the rest, 2 breaks for the nursing the child until the child attains the age of 15 months. So after the delivery of the baby, now this is the duty of the employer is along with the interval, because this is they get the interval, but along with the interval they are entitled for the nursing break, and this kind of the benefit would be given to the woman, that is for the unless until the child attains the age of the 15 months. So this kind of the benefit has to be given to this duration. Section 67, it talks about crèche facility. So it is a mandate, it has been mentioned that is into any of the establishment in which 50 employees are there, they would be getting the benefit of the crèche facility, and employer shall allow 4 visits a day to the crèche by a woman, which shall include the intervals of the rest allowed to her. So that would be the woman can visit and see the child. For this she can utilize the intervals, and the 4 visits she can she can avail to see the child. And if we see this thing from the practical point of view, there may be situations wherein only one or 2 employees intends to avail these benefits. In such a situation, the recurring cost of providing such a facilities to the employer may be very high, and therefore there must be a provision for a fixed amount in lieu of the crèche facilities to the employees. See this kind of the maternity benefit. So sometimes what happen if the employer is residing into tier 1 city, because already we know that the cost of living index would be very, very high, and if they are having the 2 or 3 women employee, it would be very, very difficult for the employer to manage this kind of the crèche and the provision for the crèche facility. So the best thing is what has been done here under this code is the amount has been fixed, so the employee himself can avail this kind of the crèche benefit. So again a good relaxation has been given under this code. Section 68, it talks about dismissal for absence during the pregnancy. When a woman absent herself from work in accordance with the provision of this chapter, it would be unlawful for her employer to discharge or dismiss her on account of such absence, discharge or dismissal of a woman during her pregnancy, and shall not have the effect of depriving her of the maternity benefit of this kind of the benefit. So if any of the employer is making the the dismissal of the woman just because the woman is pregnant, so that would be unconstitutional and it would be unlawful, because already we have seen multiple cases. Say for example, when you talk about Nargesh versus Air India and many more authorities. So that would be very much unfair, and it would be the void if the employer is making the termination of the woman on the ground of the pregnancy. So after that, section 69 talks about no deduction of the wages. No, the nature of the work assigned to her by virtue of the provision contained in section 59, it means no deduction of the wages. Say for example, employed of the woman prohibited during a certain period. So that is prohibited during certain periods, or then in that case, no deduction of the wages can be made to the woman. And breaks for the nursing the child allowed to her under the provision of section 66. So she is allowed to take the intervals, which is the day of the rest, plus 2 breaks for the nursing until the 15 months. So if the woman is doing these kind of the practices, so no deduction of the wages can be done. And after that, section 70 talks about forfeiture of the maternity benefit. To a woman who works for the remuneration during the period, she has been permitted by the employer to absent herself for availing the maternity benefit. So for example, if the employer has taken a serious note of it, so like the woman is pregnant and they are taking care of this thing, and that's why the woman is absent. But on the other hand, the woman is she works for someone else, then in that case what will happen? She will lose the right. So this kind of the benefit can be cancelled by the employer if she is doing during that course of the time, if she is doing the work for the other employer. After that, section 71, it talks about the duties of the employer, because this is the duty of the employer is, or the occupier is, they are having this kind of the provisions, because they are having the abstract is there. So like they must have to use the local language that has to be exhibited. They must have to display in every part of the establishment in which a women are employed. After that, section 72, it talks about the power of the inspector cum facilitator. So we are using the term inspect, not only the inspector, because here under the code, the new thing has been adopted, that is we are using the term inspector cum facilitator. So to direct payment to be made to any of the women claiming that the maternity benefit to any other amount which she is entitled and has been improperly withheld by the employer. Her employer has discharged or dismissed her during on account of her absence from work. Any other person agreed by the order of the inspector cum facilitator. So within a 30 days appeal to the authority which has been prescribed by the appropriate government. So they are having the right, they can approach to the appeal. So after that, if any of the women they want to get the benefit under this act is, it is mentioned that mandatory condition to avail this maternity benefit is 80 days of the work, 2 or more surviving children, and condition on a nursing breaks and condition on a crutch visit. This kind of the mandatory condition has been given for the employer. Aggregator defined, when another important definition is, that is an aggregator which has been defined in section 2 clause. That is defined in section 2 clause 2. That is, aggregator means a digital intermediary or marketplace for a buyer or use of a service to connect with the seller or the service provider. So whom we would be saying the aggregator, because the aggregator is aggregator is attached with a digital intermediary, or this is the marketplace for a buyer. So for this we are having the schedule into which, that is, the thing has been, because that has been given into the last page when we will talk about the schedules. So into which we have discussed who would be coming under the category of the aggregators. So for example, when we are talking about that is rider of bikes, or we are talking about the gig workers, either we are talking about the e-commerce, either we are doing the businesses from B2C. I mean, the thing has been, everything has been cited into the schedule 2. So almost 9 points has been given, 9 kind of the services has been cited there. So after that, Aadhaar, again one feature of this act is Aadhaar made mandatory for availing the benefits under this code, because this code mandates an employee or the worker, including an unorganized workers, to provide his Aadhaar number to receive the social benefits. Yes, because now we are using the Aadhaar or to get the benefit of all these social security schemes. But the Supreme Court has held that in the case of the Puthuswamy, into the case of the Puthuswamy versus Union of the India, that is a violation of the privacy. we are going by the Aadhaar is considered to be the one of the mandatory document to avail these kind of the benefits. Now the power to exempt, we are having the section 143 where the appropriate government they can give the exemption to the establishments, power to defer the application in case of the disaster or pandemic. So for this, because in case of already we have realized and seen that at the time of the disaster or pandemic, so this is the authority they can defer these kind of the application to avail the benefits. Chapter 3 talks about the Employee Provident Fund, and for this we are having section 44 to 23. When we see the applicability of the Provident Fund, it has been mentioned in first schedule, and this is chapter 3 where we say that it is applicable to every establishment in which 20 or more employees are employed. So basically those who are coming under this first schedule would be entitled to get the Employee Provident Fund. So that would be given to the, but the number of the threshold is 20 or more employee has to be mandatory. They want to avail this kind of the benefit. Appointment of the officer of the central board for this, because that would be appointed by the government, and we are having the schemes in section 15, framework schemes to be called the employee provident schemes, for which the employee fund shall be established for the employees and specify the establishment or the class of the establishment to which this scheme shall be applicable. So when we talk about these schemes, and the schemes to be called the employee pension scheme, so we are having this kind of the benefit under the employee, that is this kind of the benefit is their employee pension scheme, and that would be provided in case of the superannuation of the pension, retiring pension, or the permanent total disablement pension to the employees of the establishment or class of the establishment to which this chapter will be applicable. So when we talk about, so we are having the grounds when the employee pension scheme would be given in case of the superannuation pension or retiring pension or the permanent total establishments. Then in that case this kind of the benefit would be given. And in case of the widow or the widow's pension, in case of the wife is not there, or the husband is not there, or the children pension or the orphan pension payable to all the beneficiaries of the employees. And for this the schemes can be framed, that is the employee deposit linked assurance schemes for providing the life insurance benefit. So these kind of the schemes can be modified when we talk about, so we can add on, and we can this kind of these schemes can be applicable either retrospectively or prospectively. Now when we talk about that is the fund is very, very important for discharging these kind of the schemes. So when we are talking about funds, we are having the central government. The central government for the purpose of the employee provident fund, so what they can do is for provident pensions schemes, but they can establish a fund where the contribution would be paid by the employer or by the employee, but that won't be more than 10%. And for the pension scheme, when we are talking about pension scheme, so here for this, because for the pension scheme the employer would be making the contribution, and it not exceeding the 8% or we can say the 1/3 of the wages of the workers. And after that we are having the insurance schemes. So for the insurance schemes, the only that would be given by the employer, and such an amount not being more than the 1% of the wages, or the percentage of the wages will be notified by the central government in that case. So we are having the different parameters. First, like when we talk about the provident pension scheme, the 10% for the pension scheme, we said that is the 8% or the 1/3 of the wages of the workers, and for the insurance schemes the 1% of the wages, 1% has to be given by the employer for the insurance schemes by the employer. After that, contribution in respect of the employees on the contractors. So, and this section 20 talks about that the establishment which are registered under the Cooperative Societies Act 1912 or any other establishment which is belonging to the control of the central government or the state governments and whose employees are entitled to the benefit of the contributory provident fund or the old age pension, this will not be applicable, so it will not be covered here under the employee state insurance scheme. After that, Now the system for the, again an important point, section 22 talks about the transfer of the accounts for an employee. Say for example, if we have started one of these schemes with the principal, employer, can we transfer this kind of the amounts? So yes, we are having the provision that is this kind of the fund can be, transferred, and that has to be, because for this the manner would be deciding by the central government. Now the next chapter 4, it deals with the Employee State Insurance Corporation, and section 24 to 52 deals with this. So it would be Employee State Insurance Corporation. It would be applicable upon the employment every establishment in which 10 or more employees are there. Earlier the 20 or more, but here under the Employee State Insurance Corporation, that is the number, the threshold has been fixed, 10 or more employees has to be employed, and it would be applicable upon the persons but other than the seasonal factory. So on seasonal factory, this kind of the Employee State Insurance Corporation will not be applicable, and it shall be applicable to an establishment which carries on such a hazardous or life or the threatening occupation. So it would be applicable upon the hazardous occupations, or we can say the life or the threatening occupations. So the coverage has been given, and they have been defined into the first schedule. So employer of a plantation may opt like ESIC benefit, where the benefits available are better than the employer is providing. So section 4, this better functioning, we are having section 24, where the appointment of the principal officers and the staff. Section 25 talks about Employee State Insurance Fund. Section 28 talks about all employees are to be insured. And we are having the system for the better functioning of this. We are having the system for the contributions. So here the contributions can be, which can be prescribed by the central government. So, and section 31, it talks about the provisions as to be payment of the contributions by the employer. So here this is the duty of the employer is to make the contribution for these kind of the schemes. So when we are talking about the benefit under this scheme is, that is the insured person or their dependents, they are entitled. So because the insured person, they would be taking the benefit, or the dependents, because if the person is not into the existence, then in that case a dependent will come into the picture and they would be taking the benefit. They would be entitled to take the benefit like sickness benefit, maternity benefit, disablement benefit, dependence benefit, medical benefit, and the funeral expenses for this thing has been given. Section 33 talks about corporation power to promote measures of the insured persons in terms of the health and the welfare, and section 34 talks about an accident arising in the course of an employee's employment shall be presumed, and the absence of the evidence has to arise out of the employment. Section 35 talks about an accident shall deemed to be arise out of and in the course of the employee's employment, notwithstanding that he is at the time of the accident acting in a contravention of the provision of this act applicable. So for this, it is very necessary that like the person who had been, if something has happened, the person has become disabled, so like it is very necessary that the person can get the benefit if he is acting without the, he is making the compliance of the order of the employer. After that, section 36 deals with the occupational disease. So if any of the employee contracts any disease peculiar to that of the employment deemed to be into the employment, so that person would be getting the benefit. And when we are talking about the injury, means arising out of and in the course of the employment, it is very necessary that injury means either the person was doing the work into the arising out of and in the course of employment, the person would be getting the benefit, or either it is a case of the occupation disease, the person contracts any of the employee, they get this kind of the peculiar disease doing the work, they would be getting the benefit. And no benefit shall be payable to any of the employee unless the disease is directly attributable to the specific injury as arising out of and in the course of the employment. So sometime what happened, we see the proximate and the remote consequences. So it is very necessary that there must be the direct relation of the injury and the disease. For this, the employee can get the benefit under this code. Dependence benefit has been given in section 38. Like if an insured person dies as a result of the employment injury, the dependents, they would be getting the benefit payable to his dependents. medical benefit has been given, so that would be has been extended to the family, and they would be getting such a kind of the benefit. So when we are talking about in section 42 corporation rights, when the employer fails to register, sometime what happened, the person has not been registered, then in that case, but if the central government is satisfied, so the benefit can be given to the employee. And in section 45 we are having the schemes for the unorganized sectors, gig workers and the platform workers and the members of their families. So for this, the scheme has been framed, and for providing the benefits which are admissible under this chapter by the corporations. So after that, section 48 and the 49, it talks about constitution of the employee state insurance court. And in case of any kind of the dispute, the matter has to be decided by the employees insurance court. So this is like the redressal mechanism has been set up. After that, this is chapter 5, and here we are talking about the gratuity. So I told you earlier, now just to get the gratuity, it is necessary that like every factory, mine, oil field, plantation, port or the railway company, it would be applicable upon these sectors. Every shop and the establishment in which 10 or the more employees are there, or they have been employed on any day of the preceding 12 months. So into such a shop or the establishment, they would be getting the benefit. I told you that is now, earlier the condition was the completion of the 5 years of the services. So that was the mandate, but now we are talking about the pro rata basis. So if someone has served any of the establishment or any of this above mentioned sector, then in that case, they can give the gratuity on that basis. So for the continuous service, it is very, very necessary that continuous services. So we are having that is the parameter has been given. So for the just to use the word continuous service for a period, that is a uninterrupted. Continuous service means it has to be uninterrupted services, and it includes the service which may be, say for example, if that has been interrupted on because of the sickness, accident leave or the absence from duty, that is a without leave, layoff, strike, lockout or cessation of the work, but not due to the fault of the employee. This should not be the fault of the employee. Then in that case, this kind of the service would consider to be the continuous service, and an employee who is not in a continuous service shall not deem that is. And if a person who is not in a continuous service, that is would be entitled to get the benefit under this act for this continuous services if the person has served not less than 190 days. So he would be doing the work. Say for example, if any of the employed who is below the ground in a mine, so the person would be entitled to get the benefit of this service. And if the person is like otherwise the case is to 40 days has been that is given, but in case of the mines the that is a period is very less. So after that we are having the system for the nomination. So in case of the gratuity, so nomination has to be made and the person would be entitled to get the this kind of the benefits. So after that we are having that is Employees Compensation Act. So when we are talking about Employee Compensation Act, the person would be entitled to get the benefit of this service. And if the person is like otherwise the case is to 40 days has been that is given, but in case of the mines the that is a period is very less. So after that we are having the system for the nomination. So in case of the gratuity, so nomination has to be made and the person would be entitled to get the this kind of the benefits. So after that we are having that is, so when we are talking about Employee Compensation Act, the coverage has been given in section 73 to 79, and because for this second schedule is there, it applies to the employer and the employee where this ESIC does not apply. So those who would be getting the coverage under the Employee Compensation Act, so say for example, report of the fatal accidents or the serious bodily injuries there. So notice this is duty of the employers, they must have to provide this kind of the informations of such a kind of the accident has happened into the premises, or death or the serious bodily injury has been made, within 7 days of the death or the serious bodily injury, they have to give these kind of the informations. So this is the employer's liability for the compensation. So if there are no, like in case of, but this is the employer's liability to give the compensation, but say for example, either it is a case of the occupation disease listed into the Schedule 3, then in that case they can get the compensation. So but sometimes what happened, compensation in case of the death, if we are talking about compensation in case of the death or the injury in the plantation, the person would be entitled. Now the method of calculating monthly wages for the purpose of the compensation. So average wages can be determined. Now after that, the distribution of the compensation. So for this, like lump sum amount of the compensation can be given, but the direct payment cannot be made by the employer to the employee in that case, because this kind of the amount of the compensation has to be deposited with the commissioner, and the commissioner would be deciding, so they would be giving the compensation. Section 82 talks about notice and claim. No claim for the compensation shall be determined by competent authority before the expiry of the 3 days, and so if they want to get the benefit under the Employee Compensation Act, because it is very, very necessary that this kind of the injury should not to be the less than the 3 days. And for this, the notice has to be served by the employer to the government. Special provisions they are letting with the accidents occurring outside Indian territory. That would be, in that case, the special provisions has been framed and the compensation can be given. In case of the master of the ships or the seaman, captain or the other members of a crew of the aircraft, persons recruited by the companies which are registered in India and working such as abroad, or persons sent for the work abroad. And for this medical examination where the employee has, like the notice has to be given, then in that case they can make the examination of that persons. So after that we are talking about chapter 8. Chapter 8 is talking about, that is a social security and says in respect of building and the other construction workers. So the definition has been section 100 to 108, because here we are talking about building, whom we would be saying the building and the other construction workers. So it has been defined here, that is those who are doing the construction work, alteration, repair, maintenance or demolition in relation to the buildings or the streets, roads, railways, tramways, airfields, irrigation, drainage, embankments or the navigation works, flood control works, so generation, transmission, distribution of the power, water works, oil or the gas installation, electric lines, internet towers, wireless, radio, television, telephone, telegraph, reservoirs, water courses, overseas communication, dams, canals, tunnels, bridges. We are having the, like those who are doing the work like pipelines, towers, cooling towers, transmission towers, such as they have been specified by the central government by the notification, but it does not include any building or the other construction work of a factory, mine or any building or the other construction workers were employing less than the 10 workers. So they won't be coming under the definition of they won't be getting the benefit under the building and the other construction works. So for this, the definition has been given of the building workers. So whom we would be saying, that is say these kind of the persons who has been employed to do any kind of the skilled work, semi-skilled, unskilled, manual, technical or clerical work for higher reward, whether terms of such a conditions they are express or implied, but in connection with the building or the other construction work, that does not include any of the persons who has been employed mainly on a managerial or the supervisory administrative capacity. So for after that, we are having the system for that is a registration of the building workers. So because they are the beneficiaries, so it is mandated that these workers, they have to complete the age of the 18 years and but not completed the 60 years of the age. and has been engaged in any of the building or the other construction work for not less than 90 days during the preceding 12 months. So the cessation of the building works, so if the person has completed that particular age, then in that case the person will not be entitled to get this kind of the benefit. And after that we are having the state building workers welfare board we are having, and we are having the functions has been assigned for this to this particular board to take care of the death and the disability benefits, and to make the connection with the this kind of the group insurance schemes, free educational schemes. So we are having this kind of the functions has been assigned. And after that we are having chapter 9, where we are talking about social security for the unorganized workers. They have been given from section 109 to 114. So when we are talking about broadly, because already we have seen that is because Unorganized Social Security Act 2000 has been passed, but we have seen that after the passing of 21 years we have realized that like we are having the number of the unorganized sector has not been reduced. And for this, because the earlier social security legislation, they had multiple flaws. So just to make it more workable, now the schemes has been framed for this unorganized workers. And for this, so this kind of the social security benefit can be given it to the workers. And we are having nowadays, we are talking about the record keeping has been given, and very important, we are having the section 112 where we are talking about workers facilitation center, where the central government or the state government they have set up the worker facilitation center. They would be disseminating the information on available social security schemes to the unorganized workers, facilitate filing, processing, and they would be forwarding their applications or the forms for the registration. And if we are talking about the registration of the unorganized workers, so for this we are having the person who has completed the age of the 16 years of the age which has been prescribed by the government, they can get the benefit. And under this act we are having the schemes for the gig workers and the platform workers relating with the life and the disability cover, health, maternity benefit, old age protection, any other benefit. So everything has been given. We are having the National Social Security Board for this, so into which we are having the Union Minister for that level, and the Secretary Minister of Labour and the Employment for this purpose, Director General Labour Welfare, and we are having the 35 members to be nominated by the central government. But the term of this National Social Security Board is 3 years. So their job is they can recommend the central government for the suitable schemes and give the directions, and for the unorganized sectors they can monitor such as social welfare schemes, and they can review the record keepings, they can review the expenditures. So offences has been given, and we are having the employment information monitoring systems. So regarding this, and we are having the miscellaneous provisions has been given in chapter 14. This starts from section 141 to 164. So, and we for the better understanding to the students, all the schedules has been incorporated. So first schedule deals with those who would be getting the coverage and where this act would be applicable. Second schedule talks about the list of the persons who are employees within the meaning of this, they would be getting the benefit. And the third schedule talks about the list of the injuries deemed to be result in a permanent total disablement. Into the third schedule we are talking about permanent total disablement, partial total disablement, and so the list has been stipulated. So after that we are having schedule 5th is there, so that is like matters on which the provident fund schemes can be framed, and so it has been provided. 6th schedule, the factors for the working out lump sum equivalent to the compensation in case of the permanent total disablement and death, because when we are talking about who would be beneficial, because the age has been indicated and On the other hand, we are having that the factor has been cited, because this kind of the schedule helps for the determination of the compensation. And the last schedule is, that is a schedule 7. It deals with the classification of the aggregator, which we have taken it into the definition. So into which ride sharing services, food, grocery, logistic, healthcare, professional service providers, and multiple things has been, total 9 items has been given here. So I think it will help you for the better understanding of this code on social security. And this is it from my side. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Gillette Sam and I teach sociology at IIT Kanpur. I'm here to tell you a little bit about how we can think about globalization in a sociological manner. Now, one of the important concepts in the field of globalization, and particularly global studies, is that of global flows. It's a term that was developed by the sociologist and anthropologist Arjun Appadurai. He said that as the world is becoming a more and more global place, you increasingly see the movement of different types of things, both tangible and non-tangible, across multiple national borders. To begin with, you can look at how your day proceeds. I often need a cup of tea to actually start my day. Now, if you think about it, tea that we drink is not something that is that originated in India. It's actually a drink that comes to us from quite far away in China. And this is something that has happened not immediately, but it has happened 400 or 500 years ago. So this kind of movement actually happened with the movement of people. Now, this kind of movement of people and goods is one category of flows that Appadurai talks about. A second category of flows could be financial flows. And a good way to think about this is the kind of volatility that you can see in economic markets today. For instance, in 2008, the whole world experienced a very serious economic jolt. Developments in the country of Iceland had a huge repercussion across many, many countries in the world. Now, that gives you an indication of the kind of financial flows that are a part of globalization. So, we are not only talking about money flowing from place to place, but also financial decisions made in one place having an impact on other parts of the world. Appadurai also argues that there is a third category of flows, which he refers to as the flow of images or media. Now, this is something that I'm sure you're quite used to. Much of the programming that you watch on television today, for instance, you may actually be watching channels that have originated or programming that's originated elsewhere. More than that, it could also be that the programming that you see today is influenced by shows that have originated abroad. Similarly, you can have content that was made in India, which makes its way to other places in the world. For instance, we know that Bollywood films are extremely popular in many countries across Africa. So this kind of movement of media is, Appadurai considers it to be an important part of globalization. The fourth category that he talks about is the movement of ideas. So this means that ideas that are popular in one part of the world are not restricted to that part alone, but they actually travel across borders. So, for instance, something that you may read about in the papers would be, say, events such as gay pride events. Now, gay pride events have their origin in places like New York. But the idea that there should be equality between people, irrespective of what their sexual preference is, that is an idea that has now become popular across the world. And so that's the fourth category of flows that he referred to. The fifth category of flows that Appadurai talks about is that of technology. An easy way to think about this is, let's say tomorrow there is news announced that Apple is going to release iPhone 7. As you can anticipate, there is going to be a lot of excitement in many parts of the world, and people are going to start queuing up, waiting for those products to actually come to their country. So, technology is something that is quite exciting and really moves across various national borders.